cool. Hi, guys. I spent 2.5 hours at the dentist this morning and had 13 injections in my mouth, including my palate, but it seems to have settled down, so we're good to go. Okay, I've been in CTO type functions for 15 odd years. I've been in IT for more than that. But the last 6, sorry, I think I sound a bit louder. The last 6 I've been very involved with sort of formal Agile and DevOps adoption within large corporates. So actually running software engineering teams with a view to moving them forward in terms of the engineering practices. And I think that's kind of where, I think Carl spoke at Renaissance, and I think he's spot on. This stuff's been bubbling around for years, but we're at a point now, actually worldwide, where the ramp up on this is actually a non-negotiable, and I think the adoption across very, very diverse corporates is really picking up in a big way, and it's a great place to be on the right side of this initiative. So that doesn't mean we all worked stupidly before 5 years ago. I think certain good practices were in place, and we did bits and bobs that were actually fairly smart. But I think now it's pretty much formalized. It's actually an intended strategy to move off of waterfall onto these sort of agile DevOps type journeys, and it's really exciting and interesting. So this is effectively what I'm going to chat about here. Previously, I used to run, I think for 6 years, a large omni-channel dev shop. We had about 270 devs, and we built mobile apps and channel apps for the continent. I moved across to ABSA 3.5 months ago into the CTO there I think the role they wanted me to play kind of got put on hold while I was taking a little bit of a breather between the two companies. But they found something for me to do now, it's a pity because it's now a performance appraisal cycle, and up until a month ago I had no staff. So guess what I'm doing now again. Anyway, it's a great portfolio and I'm really enjoying it. I'm very passionate about automation and driving large change. I think I think the more complex the better, and the more environments change, as long as it's positive change. I think there's some organizational change that's not so positive. But yeah, I really believe in servant leadership, empowerment, that kind of thing, and I'm very anti-administration. So that's me. Right, here we are. So what are we talking about here? You guys probably all know this stuff, but there's a few things I just want to chat about. So, I mean, effectively, we're going from an environment where this is typically what happens when you tell someone you're going DevOps, okay? It's like seriously freaky for them. No one understands it, and the first thing they say is, well, what about our jobs? Carl actually said that we try to automate stuff that we hate. There's a flip side to that, though. There's people in the organization that try and keep it manual so that nothing changes as well. So it's actually very difficult getting on this journey. But anyway, and by the way, I don't have a recipe. I'm just going to chat about stuff I've done along the way, and you can discard it or do what you want with it. And we've had lots of major cock-ups on our journeys, which is fine. It's a journey of improvement and learning, so don't beat yourselves up if you don't get it right the first time. Who's actually here? Who's from like IT companies? Who's from corporates that consume IT services? IT companies? Not many. Corporates trying to do this? What does everyone else do? Project managers. No, that was just a silly joke. Okay. Anyway, this is typically what happens in, I don't know where to stand because it's echoing a bit, in a normal waterfall project in a bank, right? So it's potentially a 12-month planning session where you sit and write 400-page documents that you then email out for everyone to sign off, and then everyone responds with track changes, or even worse, comments in the email, and someone has to consolidate all this back into another 400-page doc, and then it goes out again. You get my point, right? So it wasn't long ago, and it still happens today, that people are emailing Word documents around that define requirements that will be built over 4 years. Then there's this planning phase where you got no detail, but we sit and plan and come up with a timeline. We then start coding and doing the builds. Then when all that's done, we start running our test cases manually. Meanwhile, requirements are changing, code's changing, But anyway, it's quite miraculous, but sometimes you actually have something that passes these manual test cases and it's time to release it. There's a parallel stream underneath it, though. I've said a parallel infrastructure stream. While the project's busy kicking off and we're busy building capability, there's a parallel stream trying to get the infrastructure right, building servers. And this is not, I mean, this happened like recently and it's still happening. It's actually scary. Anyway, so we start building these non-prod environments manually, then eventually prod, we're configuring firewalls manually. We're sending an artifact. So the big difference here is that vertical line there, the deployment and the upside of it, where you probably email your precious WAR file to some IS guy who copies it onto a server and starts it up and tweaks config all over the place on each instance in the stack. And then we test and nothing works. Or one server is really working, one's not, then it's a code issue, no, it's an infrastructure issue. Anyway, once we get all that right and it's in production, we then have a team of level 1, 2, and 3 that have to support this thing. They're not part of the project, they have no idea what the thing does, they have no idea how it works, they haven't written a line of code, they haven't built the infrastructure yet, they have to run the thing. So huge handoffs. Why I said so happy here is because all the dev has to worry about is writing code. So he's normally got no requirements, so he can tinker all day and have a great time. He doesn't have to run what he builds. This typically is a linear process that once the thing's live, the team's disbanded and everything disappears and all the servers that it's running on become end of life. The application server it's on becomes end of life. There's no technical debt maintenance of the code, so making a change is difficult. There's no testing available to execute against any changes you make. And that's why you end up with these massive legacy systems that no one can make changes on, right? So those run, and then we get a new thing, oh, let's build mobile apps. So let's stick a layer on top of the legacy instead of dealing the legacy, right? So then you do that again, and so on and so forth. So eventually you just have stuff running in data centers that no one can support, no one knows how it works. So effectively, this is not a time scale thing, right? That could be 10 years, it could be 6 weeks, doesn't matter. This typically you'd want to do nice and quickly. So now we move into the more DevOps world. You've still got to do some planning, some analysis, some coding, building, blah, blah, blah. So it's similar disciplines, right? But suddenly the developers now got to, well, actually everyone has to start now thinking around infrastructure stuff, deployment stuff, monitoring, alerting, testing, like a whole bunch of things they never had to worry about before. So that can be quite daunting. Some will embrace it, some will resist it, some will think it means in 2 weeks' time when we finish, they don't have jobs anymore. So it starts off pretty much like this. Everyone's paralyzed with fear, but hopefully you build a few people, champions within the organization that actually want to help make it successful. And then people start seeing that the work they're actually doing becomes a hell of a lot more meaningful. And suddenly you're getting skilled on 100 open source technologies, on infrastructure type stuff, on containers, on VMs, et cetera, et cetera. So I think some of these other points have been covered. It's an iterative process. You want lots of data so that you're building stuff that you know people are going to want. And if it's not, it's 2 weeks of work, so to make a change is no big deal. You're not tossing a 5-year project down the drain, okay? When I say no handoffs, I mean there's always a few, but less handoffs. So what you're trying to get is a vertical team that's empowered to deliver a feature as end-to-end as possible without, my boss calls it logging a beg. So raising a beg, and then the guys are like, what do you want? He's like, please, can I have a firewall change? And the guy's like, no, it's freeze. Okay, that sort of stuff. You want to empower teams to do this, and a lot of that happens through automation. Cool. Why we want to do this? I guess there's normally those 3 contenders. I think, if you just look at the modern day consumer today, he has options. He can go anywhere. He can transact overseas. He doesn't have to come to your company, right? And this is, let's say it speaks to banks, the typical Uber scenario, whatever. It doesn't matter. The customer wants to have 24/7 access to capability. It needs to work every single time. Internally in the bank, there's cost concerns. For customers, there's cost concerns. So all these things tie together, okay? I think my view is that time is the most important. If you're irrelevant and you can't get stuff to market quickly, it doesn't matter what else you've done, okay? But also, to enable you to get stuff to market quickly, you're going to be simplifying your stack. You're going to be automating testing. You're going to be using open source stuff maybe. You're going to do stuff that will probably deal with cost. By having automated tests in case, by having proper engineering capability and all that kind of stuff, to enable you to get to market quickly, you're going to improve your quality. So for us, it's pretty much about how do we get new features in the hands of customers as quickly as possible. Okay. I'm vendor agnostic, but I did steal the slide from Atlassian. But this pretty much just shows a typical iterative build lifecycle and the thousands of different tools that are available. In each class, there's probably a couple of contenders that are worth looking at. But yeah, I mean, believe it or not, there's code running in banks today that's not even in source code repos. So I'm not joking. But anyway, a lot of them are open source. A lot of them are provided through vendors of open source origins. You don't have to put all this in now. Well, let's chat about just now about a good way to get cracking. Okay, so I've just kind of split this into an engineering and a cultural play. All this stuff is actually relatively intertwined. But in terms of tooling, I mean, a good start would be collaboration tools, Jira Confluence, as opposed to email and Word documents. Word documents are great for lawyers, not for IT projects. The stuff I see in email is insane. I saw one the other day that said, please can I have XYZ? It was like bold. And the guy's like, log a ticket. So I copied the thing from the email and put in the ticket, and then the guy said, wrong department. Like, so there you're using ticketing systems, email, you name it. You're gonna, and then email like out to 20 people reply, big CYA. I stopped keeping email. I've got some people who used to work for me and they know this, and it still never backfired on me. I stopped 5 years ago keeping email. I delete everything I get, and I've never needed it to cover my ass once. So, and the more you send, the more you get, right? But running projects this way, just sending emails is like the worst thing. You spend your whole life trying to keep up to date on email. A WhatsApp's more effective, and maybe a phone call's even more effective. Or co-location when you have the necessary independence is even better. I saw something really special the other day. I saw a software artifact file attached into a Word doc and sent by email instead of using a repo. I mean, like, anyway, it's alive. It's amongst us. We're dealing with it. Okay, so just in terms, wouldn't it be easier? I started talking about sending Word documents out as requirements, getting 50. Imagine being that BA, getting that back. I think I'd slit my wrists. Have a Confluence page where people can chat. It's versioned, there's history. Your tester's looking at the same thing as your developer, as your business. I mean, just simple stuff. So where do you get started? Maybe there. Repos, automating build. There's tools that give you your technical debt. When you guys, when you get into your vertical and you're running your 2-week iterations, you got to be sure that you're dealing technical debt and maintaining pipelines as well as building business features. Okay, you can't build business features and let this thing you're building it on just decay over time. So backlog should be jointly owned by business and IT. IT should put the IT stuff on their business, the features, have your priority conversation, and then the same team executes on remediating the infrastructure. You don't have a remediation team to come fix your problems. That ring-fence team needs to do that. It sounds so obvious, but let me tell you, there'll be 100 emails going out right now dictating a timeline on a project that hasn't even started yet, that's got no funding. So yeah. Open source, obviously, in certain areas really good. There are pitfalls, but worth looking at. And it doesn't mean always go open source, but sometimes open source makes sense. Sometimes there's a SaaS service that's best of service, go for that. Actually doesn't really matter. Environment's important. When I took over in my old channel role, it took 18 months to get 2 servers in production. That should never be. You should be able to get as many servers in production as you want, whenever you want, okay? So maybe that's another good thing to look at is infrastructure automation. Config management, we've touched on scalability, resilience, active across data centers. I think there's technologies like blue-green deployments where you can have an active and a passive production environment, push change to the one, when you're happy, run a beta program, whatever, flip over, rebuild the next environment, start pushing change. Stand here for a bit. Slides are both the same, yeah. Okay, cool. Then things like testing. So test-driven development, security scans on the code, all that kind of stuff. You need to be able to commit bits of code, have it go through a pipeline and come out test it so you've got some confidence that it might work. Manual with 500 documents and signing off says nothing. I don't know how an auditor would ever accept a signed piece of paper saying, I personally tested 5,000 test cases. Okay, and then environment is important, non-production data. How are you ever going to get to reliably, repeatably shipping software out there if you don't have any non-production environments? Well, let's start with data, but in some cases, there's not even non-production environments. So obviously metrics like what are our error rates, what's our customer adoption, are we building features people are using, what's our velocity, all that stuff is very important. And they all feed into each other, these things, culture and so on. The culture, groom backlog, it's business, actively involved, prioritizing stuff, helping with requirements, making decisions with the team, not through a proxy to the team. Backlog must have technical and non-technical items on it. The team should have a definition of done. Writing code is not done. Is there a mechanism to get it properly deployed into production? Maybe that's your measure of done. Maybe in production is your measure of done. But the team should know if they're executing on a user story, the non-functionals that mean that user story is complete. Okay, collocation. So ideally, and we don't see it often, you see a proxy to business. That's not the same as business. But what you really want is your IT team collocated with decision-making capability in it. And everyone's solving the same problem. The team should be working towards the same goals every 2 weeks, not all over the place doing whatever they want. Basic ceremony should be in place, so stand-ups, have a nice open plan, collaborative environment. Guilds are quite cool to share knowledge across different teams that are doing similar things to help align and get reuse and so on. Yeah, we've touched on the whole communication thing. Ownership of production and non-production is a major thing. Suddenly a developer's got to worry about production and doing support. I mean, that's like a huge thing. But it's actually a cool thing because it means if you don't worry about your pipelines or your monitoring and you put crap in production, it should be your crap. But that, again, the team needs to have money to engineer properly, else that's never going to change. Customer centricity, I think, again, we said it's to ship value to customers, but being able to measure that and test with customers and get feedback from customers is very, very important. I think historically, someone in an office would say, I know what they want. And so I would start a 5-year project, and it's not what he wanted. Transparency, I think radiators up there, the state of your build, your backlog, like stuff should be visible and shared, okay? And then, of course, learning, like I think Google does it, that they only use internal training. So if you've got like a really hot Linux engineer in your company, let him be the guy doing the training. If you've got someone who's good at TDD, let him run the TDD courses. And, there's products like Udemy and all that kind of stuff. But it's really about learning. With the internet, it's so easy. You can download the stuff, get it running, and play around with it. But trying to get guys to actually do that, a lot of them will say, we can't do anything until we have a formal training. That's not the case. You can get cracking just off the internet for nothing. Okay. I actually have a link of some of you guys might want to take a photo of just now. Yeah, blameless is hard when you bring the whole bank down. You're like, I was just learning. It's a bit difficult, but try to get to the root cause of what happened. Make sure those fixes go in your pipeline to prevent them happening again. Okay, that's a lot. Fail first. Sure. I think we're almost done. Okay, so, again, there might be recipes and frameworks to get there. I don't believe in that. I think it's a journey of improvement, dealing with what's really difficult for you first. I think having a hands-on senior executive champion is really good, because you need air cover when, you're trying things that may not work. And someone who's actually enthusiastic can lead and then inspire people to follow. So I think at a very senior level, ideally from business, you'd want that, but also from IT. Automating blockers. So in my old role, getting the ear file or the WAR file deployed onto the app server was really, really difficult. That team didn't want to automate, so we decided to go JBoss and scripted it. There's an example of something, it was really causing us pain, so we dealt with that. Then when we had 5,000 test defects coming back to us, we were quite offended, so we automated the testing as well. So you can pick it, right? But whatever's causing the most pain, try to automate. I think also teams must solve their own problems. Parachuting in consultants doesn't help. The teams need to be given the time to do this. They know where they're burning, so they must be empowered to solve their problems. There's no one's going to parachute in without context and solve a problem in a telco when he's never worked in a telco, doesn't know what he's talking about, okay? So we've touched on a bunch of that stuff. Transparency with traditional teams is quite an interesting one. Like, you need to tell them, dude, I'm automating you. Come help me. Stay relevant, else it gets happy. So it shouldn't be like this little skunkworks thing in an organization. Be transparent about what you're trying to do as an organization. There will be pushback, but there's also opportunity for people to get involved. All right, so again, there should be a very high level of honesty and transparency and actually what you're trying to achieve. And then, of course, monitoring and data are critical. We've touched on that. There's lots of stuff you can look at there. APM tools, there's massive big data technologies you can make use of. There's open source monitoring tools. But like, know what your problems are. I've seen it many times, including about a day ago, where there's like 8 production servers with log files on them that the support people have to log on to each one to find an error. I mean, there's tech that you can have that on a dashboard real time. So it's just things like that. And then that's quite a cool site. You can basically go, there's a whole bunch of DevOps tools you can play with there and have a whole lot of fun. I went over, I think. No, I didn't. Thanks.